Welcome to my first video and my new screen name. Due to technical problems with my old account, I was forced to re-register under this new name. So to my subscribers who followed me, thank you for coming back. Here goes the first video on this new channel. This is the history and chronology of Deep Purple. Starting in the band formed in the late 1960s. With Ian Gillan on vocals and percussion, Ritchie Blackmore playing guitar, Ian Pace on drums, and Roger Glover on bass, and John Lord playing keyboards and the Hammond organ. This lineup would eventually release 8 albums together. The Book of Elysium, Shades of Deep Purple, the Gemini Suite live at the Royal Albert Hall, which was the first rock band performance with a symphony, and that was recorded and released. In Rock, Fireball, the classic Machine Head, the classic Made in Japan, and the underrated Who Do We Think We Are, which contains songs, all of which contain songs they still play live to this day. Everything was chugging along fine until early 1974, when Ian Gillan finally had enough of Ritchie Blackmore for reasons that are still kind of unknown. Depending who you ask, they either grew to hate each other or Ian Gillan felt he was being creatively stifled. Depends who you ask. So he quits. Then Roger Glover quits too. Ian Gillan would go on to form his own band, and still to this day releases solo albums sporadically. In early 1974, in the spring of '74, David Coverdale, future leader of Whitesnake, joins on vocals. Glenn Hughes, also a future member of Black Sabbath and a former member of the band Trapeze, joins to play bass and share vocal duties with David Coverdale. They released the albums Burn, Come Taste the Band, and Stormbringer, all within about 3 years. Then in early 1975, Ritchie Blackmore quits, citing his distaste for the new direction the band's music is taking. He famously says of the band's previous 2 records, Burn was painful and Stormbringer was shit. The band auditions many guitarists and ends up hiring American Tommy Bolin to play in the band. After leaving Deep Purple, Ritchie Blackmore founds the band Rainbow, which will eventually include such noted musicians as Ronnie James Dio, Roger Glover, Cozy Powell, Chuck Berge, Graham Bonnet, Jolyn Turner, and many others. As the leader of Rainbow eventually releases 9 albums before being broken up so that Ritchie can take part in the Deep Purple reunion album, Perfect Strangers. Rainbow's releases up to the first breakup of the band include classic Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow, Rainbow Rising, On Stage Live, Long Live Rock and Roll, Bent Out of Shape, Down to Earth, Straight Between the Eyes, Difficult to Cure, and Live Between the Eyes. In December of everything chugs along fine for Deep Purple until December of '76, until 1975, when after a failed concert in England sparks a near riot. The band flees the stage. David Coverdale came backstage and tearfully gave his resignation to Ian Pace, who responded to the resignation by saying there is no band to resign from. At that point, the band was officially breaking up because Tommy Bolin was a drug addict who couldn't be counted on, and there was internal problems within the band between David Coverdale and Glenn Hughes and Tommy Bolin and Ian Pace and Tommy Bolin. There was just a lot of drama, and they decided it would be best to just end the band. Then in December of 76, Tommy Bolin dies of a heroin overdose, and an official press release is put out stating that Deep Purple has folded its tents. In early 1978, David Coverdale reemerges with Whitesnake, whose early albums sound a lot like Deep Purple, which is no surprise, owing to the fact that two former members of Deep Purple are in Whitesnake, and they, both of whom, Ian Pace and John Lord, leave in the early 80s. And Whitesnake will go on to include such noted musicians as Steve Vai, John Sykes, Don Airey, Tommy Aldrich, Adrian Vandenberg, Doug Aldrich, no relation to Tommy Aldrich, Reb Beach, Uriah Duffy, Marco Mendoza, Mickey Moody, Bernie Marsden, and many others. In October of 1982, Ian Gillan is recruited to join Black Sabbath after Ronnie James Dio quits. They record one album together, Born Again, and they go out on tour for it. Gillan famously says of this tour, "This was one of the worst tours I ever had," in reference to technical problems they had during the tour, including a problem that Ian had with singing the songs, because he has never used a teleprompter. Instead, he uses a binder book on the stage with all the lyrics written in it. The problem was Sabbath used so much dry ice in their performances, he couldn't read what was in the binder, so a lot of performances were just the music and him shouting the word "yeah" quite a bit. In early 1984, the original Deep Purple lineup decides to reunite, and they record their album Perfect Strangers. On December 13th, 1984, Deep Purple kicks off its Perfect Strangers tour by playing gigs in Australia, with the first gig of the tour being in Sydney, where they surprised the crowd by playing their cover version of Little Richard's Lucille, with George Harrison appearing as a special guest on guitar. This will be the last time that Deep Purple performs in Australia for 17 years. In early summer of '85, the band kicks off their triumphant return to Britain by playing their largest concert to date at that time, at Knebworth Park in London, in front of 65,000 people. The show is broadcast via live feed on BBC One all over the United Kingdom, and was also eventually released as a live album. In 1986, former member Glenn Hughes joins Black Sabbath for one album, Seventh Star, but is fired after 4 shows of the tour, resulting from a fistfight he had with the band's manager that resulted in him getting a bone in his nose cracked that dripped blood onto his vocal cords and prevented him from singing properly. So most of the vocal duties at those 4 shows were taken over by the keyboardist, actually. In summer of 1989, after the release of Perfect Strangers and the House of Blue Light and the attendant tours for that, tensions between Ritchie Blackmore and Ian Gillan have resumed building, and it reaches a crescendo in the summer of '89, when Ian Gillan yet again has enough of Ritchie Blackmore and quits. He famously says in an interview after announcing his resignation from the band, "I'd rather slit my throat than ever work with Ritchie Blackmore again." Continued in part 2.